All right, trivia time. What American car company was offered the chance to buy Volkswagen right after World War II? Well, if you said Ford, you're right. And if you remember that the chairman of Ford said Volkswagen isn't worth a damn, you're even more right. And right now, if you're thinking, boy, that was a big mistake, well, you're really right. Hi there, Rick DeBrule here once again at the Martin Auto Museum in Phoenix, a wonderful collection of more than 170 cars that really span the full automotive spectrum, to some of the earliest cars, to some of the newest cars, to some of the hottest selling cars like this Volkswagen right here. We'll talk more about this car in just a moment. But first, make sure you like and subscribe down below. And of course, in the comments, let me know what I got right and of course what I got wrong, because there's always something I get wrong. And tell me your stories about living with a Volkswagen. I'm sure you've got plenty of them, because I know our family did. We had a 1957, we had a 61, a 67, a 68, a 69, 71, 73, 75. We had vans, we had squarebacks, we had plenty of Beetles. We were one of those families that lived in Volkswagens. And my parents bought them for two primary reasons. Number one, they were inexpensive. And number two, they were very reliable. And that meant that the Volkswagen Beetle was living up to the goals that were originally set out for this car in the very beginning. Well, by now, most of us have heard the story of how back in the 1930s, Adolf Hitler wanted a people's car. It was supposed to be an affordable vehicle that ordinary citizens could own and drive, and he enlisted engineer Ferdinand Porsche to bring that idea to life. The result was the initial design of the Volkswagen Type 1, what we now call the Beetle. Now, just a small number were built in the late 1930s before World War II brought production of the civilian version of the Volkswagen to an end. Now, here's an interesting piece of trivia. After World War II, Ford Motor Company was actually offered the chance to own VW for basically nothing. But Henry Ford turned it down, and as I mentioned, the chairman of Ford is somewhat infamous for having said back then that Volkswagen wasn't worth a damn. Now, ironically, it was a British soldier who ultimately saved VW. Major Ivan Hurst convinced his superiors that VW could actually build military vehicles, and he got the green light to rebuild a pretty rundown factory. By the late 1940s and into the 1950s, the car began to spread across Europe and eventually to the United States. And how did it become so successful in the United States? Well, two reasons. First, it was a great design. A four-cylinder, air-cooled engine that was cheap and easy to maintain, a great chassis, and just enough room inside for a family of 4 or 5 or sometimes more, which is what we did often with these Volkswagens. And then there was the marketing. The ad campaign was masterful. Black and white ads that said, "Think small," or "Live below your means." Instead of running away from economy and trying to make their cars fancier, they leaned into the fact that Beetles were simple and reliable. Both the marketing and the car worked. That's important. Sales peaked in the 1960s, and by 1972, the Beetle had surpassed the Ford Model T in total production numbers. Now, this particular car here at the museum is a 1978, and 1978 was a pretty significant year for Volkswagen. They were winding things down with the Beetle. The last German-built Beetle sedan was sold in the United States for 1977. That meant that the only Beetle available in the United States was a convertible. The idea was to go out with a little style. Since Volkswagen had already shifted its focus to cars like the Rabbit, the Dasher, and the Golf, production for those final convertibles, of course, was handled by coach builder Carman, which had been doing a lot of that work already. But when word spread that the Beetle was coming to an end, guess what happened? People started lining up to get one. The result is that instead of finishing production in 1978 as they originally planned, production actually went all the way through 1979 and even stretched very slightly into 1980, although technically all of the cars built at the very end were 1979 models. Let's take a walk around and look at the styling of our 1978 Volkswagen convertible Beetle that we have here at the museum. You know, for folks who don't know much about Volkswagens, I think, well, the car really didn't change a lot. The reality is, over the years, there were a lot of evolutionary changes that happened with the Volkswagen Beetle, but ultimately the shape was basically the same, and pretty impressive to think that the car that was penned back in the early 1930s was still being built in the late 1970s. Now, there were some significant changes. For example, they came out with a car called the Volkswagen Super Beetle at one point. Had a different front suspension, it was slightly longer, had a little more trunk room. Ultimately, it was phased out as well for the standard Beetle, but the point is there were a lot of changes that happened over time. You know, for example, the headlights. Initially, they were leaning back kind of at a slant. Ultimately, they came to the point where they were upright. These are just little eyebrows that were kind of a custom touch. The turn signals. In the very beginning, they were what are called semaphores that were mounted up on the top next to the window. They were on the fender at this point, and they got bigger and bigger over time. Having a gas cap on the outside of the car was an evolutionary thing as well. I love these mini light style wheels. These were very popular in their day, still popular today. Going to the back changed as well. Now, when you look at the various models of Volkswagen over the years, initially there was no window in the back. Then there was a small, well, I should say there was a split window. Then it evolved into a small oval window. And then eventually it got bigger and bigger over time. At this point, you can see that they've got vents in the engine cover so that the engine can breathe just a little bit better. By the way, how did it get the name Beetle? Well, the early generations of the Beetle, the actual design back here made this look like beetle wings, and so that's how it got its name. There you see fuel injection. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Of course, the bumpers got bigger and bigger. These bumpers, I believe, came out in 1968 to meet up with federal standards. Taillights also got bigger and bigger over time. Initially, they were very small. At one point, when they went to these big ones, they were more upright. At this point, they've kind of slanted them back just a little bit, give them more style to go in there. There was no shortage of companies that were making equipment to modify Volkswagens. There was a company called MP, which I think stood for European Manufacturing Products Incorporated or something like that, based in Southern California. If you had a Volkswagen, boy, you want to make sure you got an MP catalog because there was no shortage of great parts you could get to modify the Volkswagen Beetle, do all kinds of fun things with it. By the way, interesting, it turns out that the concept of a convertible actually started very early with Volkswagen. In 1949 is when they produced their first one. Now, there were just a couple, I think, that were made that year. Ultimately, as they worked on the car that was outsourced to a company called Karmann, I believe Karmann did all the coach building for the convertibles, but I could be wrong on that. Correct me down below in the comments. Let me know for sure. In fact, here you can see the Karmann tag that is on this car. Yeah, if you're thinking Karmann Ghia, that's the same company, a coach builder that was responsible for building that as well. But the original convertibles were built in 1949 and went all the way up to 1979 when the last convertibles were built. And over that time, I believe there was in excess of 330,000 Volkswagen convertibles built over that 30-year period. A critical part of the success of the Volkswagen Beetle was this engine right here. A flat-4 air-cooled marvel that was the perfect combination of simplicity and durability, and also very inexpensive. Now, flat 4 simply means that the pistons are horizontally opposed. Two go this way, two goes that way. So let's talk about how this layout was different. First, this thing back here is what we call a fan shroud. That's the fan that's turning to keep the engine cool. The pistons themselves are down here, and once again, horizontally opposed. Two of the pistons are here, they're pointing this way. And on the other side, these two are here, they're kind of pointing out this way. Some people call this a boxer configuration. Horizontally opposed is the official term. In the old days, there would have been a carburetor mounted right here. This is going up to a fuel injection system. And this was one of the most critical things of all, the fan belt. This had to be turning to make sure that you were getting proper cooling, because once again, there was no radiator. The air is what kept this engine cool. One of the great things about this layout is that it means that it makes for a flatter engine, so it's got a lower center of gravity, and that actually helps with the handling of the car, which is why so many dune buggies were built out of these things. It's also an air-cooled engine, which means it was cheaper to build and cheaper to maintain. No radiator. But the downside of an air-cooled engine is it tends to be noisier, this was, and it's not really great in extreme high temperatures like we have here in Phoenix. While it gained horsepower over the years, the basic design was still the same concept that was introduced back in the 1930s. By 1978, the carburetor, of course, was long gone. Fuel injection was standard. And the result is, unlike that very first Beetle, I think had just 22 horsepower, by 1978, this flat 4 was popping out a whopping 44 horsepower. All right, not extreme, but still a lot better. By the way, we saw our last flat 4 in a Beetle here in 1979, but it did live on in the United States in the van up until 1983. And worldwide, they continued to build this flat 4 engine all the way up until 2005. One of the great things about this engine, and I worked on them on more than a few occasions, is how easy they were to get in and out. There were 4 bolts in the back, you pulled it out, super simple to pull out. You worked on it, could plug it back in. That's another reason this car was so popular, because on the backside, if there was a problem, it was really easy to work on. If the exterior of the Beetle was slow to change, well, the interior had that same philosophy and didn't change an awful lot over the years. Now, those first VWs were pretty basic. Then a metal dashboard. The only gauge was a speedometer, although there was a clock, and both the speedometer and the clock were really in the center of the dashboard. In 1952, that's when they would switch to a layout that would become pretty iconic for the Volkswagen Beetle, with that round speedometer located just above the steering column. For years, the Beetle did not even have a gas gauge. There was a lever down here on the tunnel that you would turn to click on the reserve tank. I can remember driving down the freeway in Los Angeles with my father. The car would start to sputter because it was running out of gas. He'd reach down, he'd flip that lever, and that would allow the engine to get to that last gallon of gas, which would get us 30, 35 miles or so. The Beetle wouldn't get a real fuel gauge until 1962. The big change with the dashboard came in 1973. That traditional flat dash with the speedometer in the center was changed. Now we had a padded angled dash, and the speedometer kind of stuck up above with this cover over the top of it. It was part of the gradual improvement. The concept of having a padded dash, more comfortable seats that actually reclined. Once again, though, the basic layout was the same, and most importantly, it was still pretty Spartan when you compare it to what other cars were producing, especially throughout the 70s. Boy, this was a very, very basic layout. Now, I should also mention that one of the things that my father did with the Volkswagen was we delivered newspapers in Los Angeles. I would go out with him in the afternoon sometimes. He would take this seat out because it was easy to pull out. He'd load it up with newspapers, and then he would drive around. Now, he didn't have a sunroof, or he didn't have a convertible. He just had a sunroof, and he'd be throwing papers right and left out in Bel Air, California, throwing them all to the movie stars. But it was a convenient place. I'd sit in the back, papers would be stacked up to here, and he was driving around throwing those newspapers everywhere. By 1979, the Volkswagen Beetle had become one of the most recognizable automobiles in the entire world, especially here in the United States. 1979 marked the official end of the Beetle run. The 77 was the final sedan. 79, as I mentioned, was the final convertible, although they actually built them technically into 1980 in January. Outside the United States, though, the Beetle stayed in production much longer. In Mexico and Brazil, they continued manufacturing the Beetle for decades with really only minor updates. In Mexico, production finally came to an end for the air-cooled Beetle in 2003. That was after more than 21 million had been built worldwide. In 1998, Volkswagen introduced the new Beetle, the first major redesign since the cars began. The second generation model was built on a front-engine, front-wheel drive platform that was shared with the VW Golf. It did feature that retro-inspired shape that kind of echoed the original, but with some modern amenities, things like airbags, better fuel injection, climate control. What a concept. The new Beetle was aimed at a new generation of drivers who wanted nostalgia but modern materials. A third generation arrived in 2011, simply called the Beetle. It had that original shape to a degree, but it was a little bit lower, a little bit wider stance, a little more aggressive version of the Beetle, if you want to call that. And it shared components with other Volkswagen models. And you had engine options. You could get a turbocharged engine. You could get a diesel engine. That generation of the new Beetle, the Beetle continuation, ran until 2019. But you think about it, from those original roots, back in the early 1930s, when they were first being built in the late 30s, when they were being imported in the United States starting in 1949, when they really hit their stride in the United States during the 1960s. The shape of this car, the concept of this car, was really perfect from the word go. There's a reason this car became an icon internationally, because it delivered exactly what buyers and the people who were going to be in those cars wanted. They wanted something that was simple, they wanted it to be reliable, and they wanted it to be inexpensive. And that's exactly what the Volkswagen Beetle delivered from day one.